Rockstar Games presents Table Tennis is the ultra-competitive, transcontinental ping-pong simulator that has defined a digital generation. Originally released in 2006, the game is still praised for its incredible detail and pacing. But beyond the intricacies of this seemingly innocuous game lies a tangled web of political intrigue and the, dare I say, wokeness present in every single title that brandishes the Rockstar logo. In our previous video essays, we discussed the extravagant monotony of GTA 5.
Go to college. Then you're gonna rip people off and get paid for it. It's called capitalism.
The cold realities of third world liberation in GTA 4.
There is no I, there is only we. It is a glorious system, comrade.
Excuse me?
You're excused, comrade, you're excused. Now go and mine salt for 50 years.
You're a dick.
The systemic oppression of black Americans in GTA San Andreas.
Hey, I like a nice mustache myself.
The domination and alienation of children in Bully.
You keep that nose clean, boy, or I shall clean it myself.
The fight for true liberty in Red Dead Redemption 2.
I got a saying, my friend. We shoot fellas as need shooting, save fellas as need saving, and feed 'em as need feeding.
And the ruthless vulture capitalism practiced by Tommy Vercetti in GTA Vice City.
My livelihood destroyed! Vercetti, remember the name!
I even managed to make an entire occult lesson out of the Chiliad mystery.
Now, do you see this red line here that runs from Mount Chiliad to Paleto Bay? Why is it there? To anyone? Because it turns out that it is exactly half the radius of the circle we just created.
We've also covered the Hauser brothers' humble ascent to video game royalty, utilizing their father's connections as a solicitor to obtain entry-level jobs at BMG Interactive, and working their way up to head of development and producer, respectively, within a few years. Born 2 years apart in the early 1970s, Dan said in 2012 that their lives were filled with an almost pathological reverence for the obscure and the underground, as they sought out stuff nobody knew about, as if that would contain some truth or honesty that other, more mainstream things lacked. This exploration of counterculture, mixed with a love for the gritty crime dramas and spaghetti westerns made after the removal of Hollywood's Hays Code in 1968, would heavily influence their writing style and perspective.
The original game was based on watching too many American movies and watching all that overhead helicopter chase footage, which was the only camera we could use due to the limitations on the old hardware. But we always wanted to make an action movie when you actually felt like you were controlling a real character.
When we talk about the anti-capitalist messages found in Rockstar Games, we are not talking about one's ability to make money, but the effect that centuries of individualistic consumerism has on our psyches and spirits, and the lengths everyday people go to break free of that trauma without losing what's left of their soul.
Now we own you, Mr. Marston, and we own Mr. Milton too, and we own your property. But you can buy your freedom each week. Eventually, you will be a homeowner.
I understand.
Congratulations, you are now a real American, indebted and owned by the bank.
In a 2006 interview with IGN, Sam makes it very clear that the goal of Table Tennis is not to make money, but to demonstrate the capabilities of their new Rockstar Advanced Game Engine, while providing a unique gaming experience on par with their action titles. That's right, folks. Much like the dozens upon dozens of radio broadcasts, TV shows, and Easter eggs found throughout Rockstar's massive open worlds, this game exists simply because they felt like making it.
This some land of freedom, not land to share equally.
The Hausers are not capitalists. They are artists who, like all of us, want the space and resources to realize their vision without compromise. I can say this confidently because when compromise became inevitable, all but one of the founders of Rockstar Games have decided to walk away from their creation. To understand the commodification of Rockstar Games, we must look no further than the head of Take-Two Interactive, Herr Strauss Zelnick.
I don't understand you. What are you doing?
Go and get a job!
Over the past 20 years, Leslie Benzies, Mike Unsworth, Laszlo Jones, Rupert Humphreys, and the Hauser brothers have created games that are incredibly entertaining, while serving as poignant commentary on American culture, international politics, and the modern human condition. And despite its comparatively benign theme, Rockstar Games presents Table Tennis is yet another testament to this uncompromising courage and vision. The user manual provides us with the pastime's comical origins, beginning in the late 1800s as a parlor game played by the wealthy during England's colder months. The rather brief summary goes on to discuss table tennis's popularity in the West, but as with all Rockstar games, the subtext speaks much louder than what's on the surface.
China versus USA. Best of 3 games, 11 points to win. China to serve.
Ping pong diplomacy refers to the relationships developed in the early 1970s between American and Chinese table tennis players that is said to have inspired the US government to lift their embargo on communist China. When self-proclaimed hippie Glenn Cowan missed his bus and ended up riding with the Chinese team, he was befriended by 3-time world champion Zhuang Zedong and offered some humanizing words to the press upon his return to the States. Invoking his leader's hope in the American people, the unrelated Zedong would trade a painting of the Huangshan Mountains for one of Cowan's t-shirts that read, "Let it be." By 1972, the Shanghai Communique was established by Richard Nixon, Henry Kissinger, and Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai, with skepticism from Chairman Mao himself. In these meetings, Nixon would rely heavily on the disintegrating relationship between China and the USSR, and the agreement was seen as a major turning point in global anti-Soviet sentiment. Ironically, table tennis was said to be banned in the Soviet Union from 1930 to 1950. So, I saw this statement made in a few different places, but I actually can't find a source for it. What I did find is an archived article from the Russian Table Tennis Federation website that says a theory proposed in the early 1930s, quote, significantly slowed down the spread of table tennis, but it began gaining popularity again right after World War II. The theory apparently was that the game made you go blind, but was also discouraged in favor of team activities. What's interesting to note here is that the American game manufacturer Parker Brothers purchased the ping pong trademark in the 1930s and began enforcing it at tournaments with the help of the newly formed U.S. Table Tennis Association. Parker Brothers would also purchase the rights to Lizzie McGee's The Landlord game and began selling it under the name Monopoly. So we can see why the Soviets probably weren't too fond of it. Our player options provide us with even more international drama.
China versus Sweden. Best of 3 games, 11 points to win.
For example, Sweden was the first Western country to establish diplomatic relations with the People's Republic of China in 1950. On the next page, we have the fascists, Japan and Germany. I don't think that warrants too much more of an explanation. Then we have France and Egypt, who have a very sordid history, including the Napoleonic occupation of Egypt from 1798 to 1801. Which led to the discovery of the Rosetta Stone and the beginning of Western Egyptology. 30 years later, Egypt's Muhammad Ali Pasha would gift both the Luxor obelisks to France, one of which now stands at the main location of the guillotines during the French Revolution. We can go on and on about how the pyramids were built, but what I want to know is how somebody in the 1800s mailed a 25-meter obelisk halfway across the planet. That dynasty would be overthrown in 1952 by socialist and pan-Arabic icon Gamal Abdel Nasser, who supported the Algerian National Liberation Front's War of Independence with France from 1954 to 1962, and gladly took on British, French, and Israeli forces when he nationalized the Suez Canal in 1956. A lifelong supporter of Palestinian liberation as well, Nasser would unexpectedly die of a heart attack in 1970, replaced by his more liberal cohort, Anwar Sadat. By 1978, Egypt and Israel had signed a historic Nobel Prize-winning peace treaty, to the dismay of many rejectionist Arabs. Next up is Brazil and South Korea, who developed relations in the early 1960s, just as their respective far-right military dictatorships were coming into power. The 1988 Olympics in Seoul marked the first time either country had experienced democratic elections in decades. Coincidentally, this event was also the debut of table tennis.
Ireland with the serve.
Finally, we have the great rivalry between England and Ireland. You know, that age-old sport where one team starves the other in the name of fair competition. This contest of two completely willing and equal participants is best summarized by Sinead O'Connor's 1994 track, Famine.
Okay, I want to talk about Ireland. Specifically, I want to talk about the famine, about the fact that there never really was one.
Speaking of queer icons, notice that none of the 11 players are gendered. On top of that, only 3 are white and male presenting, and that's only if you count Germans and Swedes as white, which early racists like the Founding Fathers did not. Want to represent the good old US of A? You'll be playing as the racially ambiguous Haley. Want to defend the glory of your British ancestors? You're rocking with Mark. The juxtaposition of nationalities and player attributes cannot be a coincidence here, and it's certainly not designed to cater to the Gamergate crowd. Rockstar Games presents Table Tennis as a simple yet immersive game that reintroduced Western audiences to the international sport of ping pong, and in so doing, provided an opportunity for cross-cultural camaraderie and healthy competition. Providing a completely novel gaming experience is a rare feat in today's market, and Rockstar did it twice in 1 year. In a world run by massive corporations that will take any remotely profitable creation and milk it for all it's worth, this is ultimately the goal of all Rockstar games. Well, that, and coming up with extravagantly cinematic ways to murder capitalists.
My God, this is good. It tastes just like chicken, but somehow more, sentient.
Goodbye, my old friend. Thanks for all the advice.
Good. I prefer it this way.
Good night, and good luck.